Well, welcome back to our thought for the day, April the 21st. Today we're going to continue in our mini series, our mini trilogy of the Franciscan vows for the First Order, which are, and the Second Order, so the Franciscan brothers and sisters. And that is of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Yesterday, we very briefly touched on poverty. Today, we're going to touch on chastity. Some people say, or call it celibacy. However, I'm going to use chastity because it's actually a more inclusive word. Celibacy obviously has its own connotations, and chastity does include celibacy, but chastity is a much bigger framework. And even us third order Franciscans are called to a chaste life within sometimes within the realms of marriage if we're married. However, the implication is if we're not married, we ought to be very chaste anyway. Chastity has obviously a larger connotation. As Brother Ramon suggests in his book, that the word celibacy and chastity are not opt-out words, but inclusive words with that we understand. If we understand them rightly. And that's because to live a chaste life is actually a life of devotion. And we can do that within the intimate relationship of marriage, and we can do that in the intimate relationship to God. Obviously, in Francis's day, and we see it today, obviously, unfortunately, within the celibate priesthood, that celibacy is a call in itself, and way back when in the 13th century, when Francis was leading out the way, a lot of the monastic orders had made celibacy so legalistic, and a legalistic requirement that then meant that when you have legalism, you tend to have people succumbing to breaking that legalism. So for Francis, even though it was definitely understood that if you were to become a brother or a sister in the first or second order, that chastity meant sexual celibacy, he didn't do it in such a way that was legalistic, and so but full of grace. And for me, celibacy or chastity is largely about identifying your relationships. So it's about having. Is similar to what the gospel story is, or the overarching story of the Bible, which is that there's the scandal of the particular, which means that when you read the Bible, you see that God chooses the particular in order to achieve the universal. So by committing ourselves to a relationship wholeheartedly and fully, whether that be, as for brothers and sisters of the First Order, especially to God and to the community that they're in, or to a third order, which would be to God and to their spouse, it enables us then to, in loving the other person, or in loving God with our whole body and mind and soul, it then leads to our ability to love other people better as well. So it's not, in celibacy and chastity, it doesn't lead us to a frigidity into other relationships, or a standoffness to other relationships. It actually enables us to have better relationships outside of that primary relationship which we remain chaste to. And that's the wonderful thing about the Franciscan understanding of celibacy or chastity, is that in the particular relationship, it enables us to develop the love in order to love others. We see this with God's relationship with Israel. He gave himself in fidelity and chastity to one nation in order that his love would be experienced by all nations. You know, it's no accident that the Bible talks about Israel and then later the church being the bride of Christ, you know, or the bride, or God's bride, because it's that same sort of relationship that in God's love for his church today, us being the bride of Christ, that particularness enables us then to say that actually God's love can be experienced by all. And we can have a healthy and not standoffish relationship to other people, because we are chaste. We are faithful to the relationships, the primary relationship we've been called into. And that's the same in marriage as it is in a monastic order, where actually you become or you express your chastity to God and that relationship. So that is our understanding of chastity, and you can see it takes it away from the legalistic bounds that suggest that if you're chaste or celibate, that you can't engage in other loving relationships. No, it actually enables you to love others better. It's like when Jesus was asked what was the greatest commandment. He didn't say, love God, intellectually, or, love God emotionally. No, he said, love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, every ounce of your being. Be faithful, be chaste to God. And then what did he say? And love others love others, and that will give you the capacity to love others and to love yourself. So through that relationship of wholehearted love to God, it enables then you to love your spouse, your children, your friends, your enemies, with the same love that you have for God. And that's what it means to take the vow of chastity. And you can see why then these vows come under the one vow, which is the one that we do in our baptism, that all Christians adhere to. So obviously this has various implications for our life today. And you might want to ponder some of the questions and things that, if you were to live this sort of chaste life, what does that then mean in regards to both your relationship with God, with other people, and your relationship with sex and your sexuality? Because in living a chaste life, if you are called to a celibate life, that enables us, for those of us that follow that path, to take that sexuality, that sexual energy, and channel it into spiritual ways. Yet you can do that as well, even if you are in a sexual intimate relationship. You can still practice chastity within that relationship and direct those energies to a spiritual good.